Matt, welcome to the CRO podcast. And of course, we'd first like to know a bit more about you and your background and why on earth you got started in CRO.
Yeah, so my name is Matt Skaisbrook. I'm Director of Optimization at We Teach CRO. I guess like many people, I kind of fell into CRO. So my first role, the company that I joined had just installed Google Analytics on their website, and no one in the team knew how to use it. Because I was the new guy, I was the burden on everyone. Because I knew nothing. So when we realized nobody knew it, I put my hand up and said, okay, well, let me learn, so that I had something that I could actually be useful with, rather than just, sort of sucking the life out of everyone else, constantly asking questions. It started there. But I think for me, CRO sits so neatly on the sort of the intersection between creative, analytical, and technical. So I've never felt pigeonholed in that way. I think also as a person, I judge the value of a lot of things based on the size of the opportunity rather than exactly on its value right now. I think just that natural mindset makes CRO a perfect industry for me to be in.
Yeah, and can you tell us a bit more about the company you founded? To me, it seems, at least fully based on the name, it's quite a unique approach already, because many agencies will say, okay, give us your access to your clients' data, and we'll help you improve your conversion rates. But We Teach CRO implies that you don't do that approach, but rather teach the clients how to do CRO. So why is that?
I think that there's a couple of parts to it. So when I first started the business 5 years ago, there was the original sort of proposition was that we would over time teach our clients to take over the various bits of work that we were doing, and that's sort of how we settled on the name. And what we found was that that proposition opened a lot of doors for us. We could talk to clients that we may not otherwise have got a chance to speak to, given our size, and it was met really, really positively. Like, yeah, this is a great idea. When it then got down to signing contracts, what you found was that, unfortunately, most of the stakeholders who would sign those contracts, they just wanted someone to do it for them. They frankly didn't want to invest that much in upskilling their teams, which is a tad sad. But I don't think it's changed all that much over the last 5 years. Initially it was to have a different approach, but what we found over time as we've worked through is that the more that you share about what you know, it has multiple benefits. So firstly, anyone who works agency side in any kind of role knows that the more that a client knows about your subject, the easier it is to work together and the better work that you do. If there are 5 or 6 assumptions or deductions that you've made along a path before you get to the discussion that you're currently on, the fewer of those that you have to explain in detail, the easier it is, and the faster you get to the outputs. So for us, explaining to our clients how we reach certain conclusions is hugely important. It helps us all be more efficient. That means that the service that the client receives is better. And from a business side, as an agency, that keeps our retention rates up. We have happy clients who know more today than they knew yesterday. I think the other side of it, the more that you give away about how to execute programs at scale, the more it solidifies why you're necessary. So we've seen this recently with a large client of ours, where another area of their team has started running tests as well. Most of them server side rather than client side. And initially, they did not believe that our input, as a third party, was necessary. Our main contact there, who we've worked with side by side for over 3 years now, he was insistent that we had oversight of what was being done. And as those first sort of few tests started to get rolled out, they came to realize why we were there. So it's things like, okay, well, test entry isn't being logged properly. So, the data that you're passing into GA, that's starting at the wrong point. So you're not seeing a full picture. You're only seeing people who complete what you've changed, not people who see what you've changed. And there was a string of other elements to it. So I think the view there is that by giving away and sharing what you know, it doesn't devalue the agency. It only increases the value of the agency. The more the client knows, the more they see the work that goes into having a program running at scale.
Yeah, and but then how much time roughly would you say you're still able to spend on teaching those people?
I don't see it as separate to what we do on a day-to-day basis. It is what we do
Learning on the job,
on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, and that applies both for our clients and for our team members. We have one of our hires earlier this year. He described our hiring strategy as gathering the waifs and strays. We've hired people with very abnormal backgrounds. People who haven't come from a CRO background, or even an analytics background, or even a digital background, for that matter. And we can do that because we have a core group of people who know their work inside out, and we have I've described it as we are big enough to support them and to get intelligent, bright people to understand our work, but we're also small enough that their work actually matters on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I think that the teaching part, as I said, it started as a proposition that frankly never worked. But it's now become at the core of what we do. And if we didn't do that on a daily basis, we wouldn't be where we are now.
And the hiring non-digital people, did that come about with the shortage of people to hire, or was it already there from the beginning?
A mixture. So when I first started the agency, my background is as a consultant. So I did all of the consulting myself, as most of us do. And what I decided was that at a certain point, the right thing to do was bring in someone at a trainee level rather than at an experienced level. One of the team members at the time, his brother was looking for a change. He was a police officer at the time in London. Had done that for a good few years. Decided that was done for him, and he was looking for something new. And yeah, my team member asked me, would I speak to him? And I said, yeah, sure. I don't have any other sort of standout options at the moment. So yeah, sure, I'll speak to him. We met a few times. It was clear that he was very bright, driven, and really wanted to make a new career for himself.
So how did you get him up to speed to the work that you're doing?
A mixture of a lot of time, a lot of my time, and getting him involved in live things as soon as we could. My belief has always been the best way to learn is to do. You need to have a base level of understanding, sure, to know what you're doing. But if you have the oversight from someone who has done this work day in, day out for years, you can get bright, driven people to a good standard very quickly. And because they're in an agency, in a specialist agency that only does one thing, you're not asking them to become a master of all different disciplines. You are focusing them on one particular thing. And we did that for the first time. That'll be almost 4 years ago now. And at that point, seeing where he's since moved on from my agency. He now works at conversion.com, so one of the largest CRO agencies in the UK. And that has shown us that we can develop people with no meaningful background in our work into really, really strong practitioners. I was it was a sad moment in some ways to see him leave. That happened earlier this year, but also I'm immensely proud of what we've helped him to achieve and what he's then been able to do since he left us.
Yeah, and I can imagine that when you talk to a lot of people and hired people, you rather you start figuring out what kind of traits people need to have for this job and what things are that are not working for this job. So any ideas around that?
Yeah, I think the attitude matters a huge amount. You can teach skills, you can provide experience in doing the work, but you cannot make somebody good to work with. That isn't a teachable trait. You cannot make someone diligent. You cannot make someone care about the little details in things. And those when we put out sort of job roles now. When we're getting to the section about what you will need, we lead with those things. We don't lead with what your experience is in terms of have you used this tool or have you used this tool. It is, we care about the person and the character that you are more than those things. If you've got gaps in those skills, that's fine. We've got those skills already. We can pass that on, but we cannot make you diligent. We cannot make you the sort of person who will do the right thing when no one is watching.
Yeah.
And
or maybe you can,
but
it will take too much time.
I think a lot of it's inherent in people. It's either who you are or it isn't. That's a self-discipline thing. So yeah, we focus a lot more on who somebody is, knowing, because we've done it repeatedly, that we can teach you all the skills that you don't currently have.
Yeah, and if you're interested in the field, then of course that definitely helps with your attitude towards it, right? I mean, if you're working a job that you don't like or not interested in, then
yeah, we've had people who I would describe as being underutilized in the roles that they're currently doing. Frankly, roles that aren't going anywhere for them for various reasons. And that gives them, I think that gives them a kind of steel that other people don't necessarily have. Those who are switching careers, I've never done it. I've never done that career switch in the way that some of my team members have. That takes a lot of bravery and a lot of self-belief to say, you know what, this section where I've got, 5-6 years experience in that, I'm going to put that to one side and I'm going to start again with something completely new. And that takes a lot of bravery, and it tells you a lot about a person's attitude to work and to their career.
Well, and specifically for us, that shows that they're open to experimentation, right?
Yeah, exactly. It shows that they are willing to look beyond what a natural path for them might be, and to see where somewhere else might take them.
Yeah, really cool that you're doing this, and I guess a lot of people or a lot of agencies can learn there that something from this approach, and then opening it up, and maybe not leading with you're skilled in Google Analytics or the tools that we use, but rather the attitude towards experimentation.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you tell us a bit about the projects that you're doing? What are the little gems that you're working on?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess recently helping Nando's launch their latest version of their ordering process has been a big one. We helped them with their first ever online ordering process, which would have been 3 years ago now. They've since had various iterations of that.
And Nando, for those not familiar, that's like a fast food chicken piri style.
Yes, correct. Yeah. I forget they're enormous, an enormous household name here in the UK. I'm not sure what their global reach is in other places.
I haven't seen them in the Netherlands yet, but yeah.
I know that they're not particularly well known in the US, but yes, they're on many high streets in the UK. Um, we've also been able to expand the number of GoDaddy brands that we work across as well. They've been a client of ours since pretty much since day one, which we were very fortunate to pick up work with those guys. But we've now got brands that we work on with them across US, Germany, and the UK as well. And I guess as an organization, their belief in CRO and experimentation is without doubt. There's no question for them that it is the right thing to do, regardless of whether you're working on some of the bigger brands or some of the smaller ones that they own, because they own hundreds across the world. So it's good to see, especially some of those smaller brands for whom we may be their first experience of running a program. I think that we've had a few clients over the last few months for whom we are the first agency they've ever worked with. We are responsible for the first tests that they've ever run, and I think for me that's probably the most exciting part. It's not working necessarily with the big household names. It's nice in a way. It's nice to be able to tell people you work with big brands, but seeing someone go from doing very little or even nothing into call it the excitement that they get from seeing new things coming, every few weeks I think that means a lot to me to see those. So yeah, getting people started is thoroughly rewarding.
Yeah. I mean, to go from zero to anything is already a big step for most, right? And do you then often are you working with people in those companies that already have like a job title, something like CRO, or is it more broader than that?
Yeah, often not. So some of the businesses you might be working with with one of the directors of the company. There are some businesses that we work with who are, whose revenues are 5-10 million, but their core team, sort of as an office team, might only be 10 people.
Yeah.
So a lot of their focus is obviously in the manufacture of their products and the fulfillment of their products, and that's where the bulk of their team may sit. But yeah, sometimes we've worked, as I said, with directors. Sometimes you're working with marketeers. We've even had one client who changed the job focus of one of their team not long after starting work with us, because they realized that this was an area that they needed internally to dedicate more resource to as well. So yeah, I think working with businesses, bigger ones who have been running CRO or experimentation programs for a long period it's a different experience to working with those who are effectively building from the ground up.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting role that you're describing. So that's interesting for companies that are hiring a CRO agency. So what kind of resources do they need to have? What kind of is that person then like the main communication channel between you and what the company is doing, or what's their role?
Yeah, I think it is a multifaceted one. So yes, they are important as our conduit to understand more broadly what's going on in the business. And if you are dealing day to day with a director, that has its benefits because that person generally knows virtually everything that's going on in there. Also, they have
and can sign things.
Yes, they have the authority. So if you say, we want to do this, and they don't say, oh, well, I'll take that away and we'll have a committee meeting in 2 weeks and we'll let you know. They just go, yeah, I like that. And off you go. And you can move ahead. I think also having access to those people at the higher levels, they can see daily the difference that this makes to the business, not just in terms of the changes they may see going through the site, but because they've got more of a finger on the pulse of the overall business health, they really understand the direct impact that the changes that we're testing make. So yeah, it is a big help. Can we pause for a sec? Because someone is knocking on my door.
Oh,
Bear
yeah,
with
sure.
me.
Go ahead. We'll have a short break here.
The joys of working from home, mate.
Did you just tell them to stop knocking, or?
Yeah, I was just a delivery. But sometimes they just knock and leave it. Other times they knock, and if you don't answer, they keep knocking. You're like, ah! I'll just go and answer the door.
Here they sometimes just don't even bother to knock. They just either put the package in front of the door, or I also have this sometimes that we have one car, which is actually my girlfriend's car. I usually use trains or whatever, and I work from home for most of the time. So sometimes when she takes the car, then the delivery guy just say, "Oh, the car's gone. There's probably no one home." And then just doesn't deliver, and then just drops it at the post office. Like
they throw things over our fence or over our back gate is the other thing. If it's like I think they must sort of like squeeze and go, "Oh, it's clothes" or whatever, and then just throw it.
Here's your new computer monitor. Whoop.
Yeah, and then they leave you a card that says, "Oh, we've left it in a safe place." Like, no, you haven't left it anywhere. You've thrown it over a fence.
So helpful of them.
Yes, very
so helpful. Okay, let's continue. Hey, some time ago you posted on LinkedIn to change things up. You wanted to start posting more about CRO. So first, I want to know what triggered this, and how's it been going so far?
Yeah, so what triggered it is probably a mixture of things. Firstly, so we hired an in-house marketeer about 6 months before that point, who'd been banging on at me about, Matt, you have to start doing something. Yeah,
use your network, Matt.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think also I'd gotten to the point where I'd started to understand what I believe to be important, and sort of starting to form some rules, I guess, for myself about how I wanted to talk. And the message that I wanted to get across. And I think, similar to what we discussed earlier about, the teaching element, where that started and where it is now. It took time, it took experience to understand really what that meant to me and to us as a business. And I think it was the same thing with talking about CRO publicly and more frequently, is that it has taken me time to really understand what it is that I consider to be important.
And how's that been going so far? What have you posted about?
Quite a lot of stuff.
Have you been stirring things up a bit?
Debates. Yeah. Well, I started with setting out the rules for myself. So I wrote them down and then I posted those. So I had 3 do's and 3 don'ts. So my 3 do's were provoke debate, hence why I have on occasion, support all practitioners regardless of level, and champion doing something over nothing. As we talked about earlier on that front, you have to start somewhere. And that means choosing to do something rather than do nothing. It won't be perfect. It may not even be good to begin with, but you get nowhere if you do nothing.
So how do you go about with the first one, like provoke debate? It sounds like a bit malicious. Like it doesn't really matter if it's good or not, or if it's true or not, but at least it should.
Yeah, well, it marries with the first of my don'ts, which is don't sit on the fence. If you have an opinion, voice it. It doesn't mean that you have to be rude to people, and it doesn't mean that you can't appreciate somebody else's perspective. But I think in the UK in particular, we tend to shy away from confrontation, and we tend to see confrontation as a negative word. Whereas one of my team is French. And she has been telling me for years, we've known each other a long time, she has been telling me for years that in France, confrontation is not seen as a negative, it's seen as a positive. You should engage in differences of opinion. If somebody
Yeah.
says something that you don't believe to be true, you don't just nod. You say, oh well, actually my opinion is this, or I believe this. And I think that that debate is important. We're never all going to see eye to eye on everything. We're never all going to believe that the right way to do things, whatever that even is, the right way is the same, and it won't be the same for everyone. It's all clouded and shaped by our own experiences. But talking about those and almost celebrating those in a way is important.
And how do you go about doing this and then introducing or helping new people? I think you also mentioned that it might be a bit scary for newcomers to CRO, to see people talking about CRO in general, and then it feels okay. It's a high bar before I can join the CRO club.
Yeah. It is, and I think a lot of that stems from. There's been a lot of discourse in our industry over recent years that everyone's doing everything wrong. And yeah, some of that may be correct.
Like that.
Yeah. And maybe it's true. But that to me isn't really the point. If you want to bring people on a journey with you, you don't tell them they're wrong all the time. You recognize that what they're doing right now is they're doing the best that they can. Yes, okay, they may be missing certain information, but if you, as I mentioned earlier, around bringing new people into our team, like I've seen some things that they've done and gone, no, probably don't want to do that. But you don't just shout you're doing it wrong at them out the door. You sit down with them and go, okay, how did you get to that point? Okay, well, you got to that. Yep. 3 years ago, I did the same thing. Until somebody else pointed out to me that this, so you recognize your own flaws. I guess you bear those flaws to people. And then if you tell them, okay, well, that thing, you need to do that in this way, they understand that isn't just you saying this is, that I know more than you. I was where you were, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is, because each and every one of us has, if you look back at some of the things you did 5 years ago, would you do them the same way now? I highly doubt it. I certainly wouldn't. And I don't think there is one of us in our industry who wouldn't say that. And in another 5 years, we will do the same thing. We will look back at what we're doing today and probably think, yeah, I wouldn't do that way now.
There are a lot of things I did yesterday that I already regret. So,
a comment my mother made to me a few years ago. So I was telling her, it was not long after my 30th birthday, and I was telling her about some of the decisions I'd made in my early 20s, and said, I can't believe that that I thought that was a good idea. And she would have been in her 50s at the time, and she said to me, "Oh, don't worry. There are things I look back on that I did in my 40s, and I still feel the same way." So in some senses, it was a relief to know that it never changes. In other ways, it's a little disappointing knowing that you will always look back on things and think I would do it differently. But yeah, so I think that the engagement of those who are newer into the industry, you don't get that engagement with people. You don't bring them along a journey by telling them they're wrong all the time. You do it by recognizing that you too were there, and that we're all on the same path. It's just about at what point in time did you start on it.
Yeah, and I don't think that's anything specific to CRO, right? I mean, it's all about getting new people in and trying to keep them motivated throughout their journey.
Yeah, because they are the future of the industry sits with people who are newer in. We will at some point, pack this in and retire, and but other people need to be there to to carry it on. We all agree that it is an essential part of businesses growing, developing, prospering, to have this experimentation mindset. I just it pained me. I actually had after I posted that initially, I got a few messages from people I'd never met before, who told me that they felt that they are relatively new to the industry, and that everything that they were reading was telling them that they would never be good enough, and that hurt a little bit, because to some extent we all end up being tarred with the same brush.
Yeah, I mean, if you just only look at the cxl.com list of courses you can follow for a CRO specialist, I mean, that's quite the list, right? I mean, and I love them. But if that's the start of your journey, you see that list, I can imagine that's not necessarily motivating.
It's pretty
to see
intimidating.
That enormous list of stuff you need to know.
Yeah. It's pretty intimidating, and it ends up going back to one of my other do's, which is champion something over nothing. If you think that you're going to, before you do absolutely anything, you're going to do all of those courses and learn all of that stuff and then start, you'll probably never start. You know, learning by doing and is in my opinion the most effective form of learning. And in the end, one of the core tenets of what we do is about test and learn. You know, that should apply to us as individuals as much as it does to the work that we do. The assumption is you're going to be wrong more often than you're going to be right, and that's okay. And that idea needs to move over into people's development as much as it does in the day-to-day practice of our work.
Yeah. And one of the things that you also mentioned that I think relates to this, that CRO or experimentation does not have to be all-encompassing to be valuable, right? Those elements already contribute to the whole.
Yeah, I think this was one of the debates I sparked at one stage, and I used a comparison with communism, which I'm not sure, maybe I shouldn't have used it, but
well, if you want to stir some debate, then that's a good start.
Well, I do have a history degree as well, perfectly relevant to my profession, obviously. But yeah, it was basically in. There were two different strands of communism at one point. One where they believed that you could skip stages in Marx and Engels' idea of the progression of society, and a contrary view that said you could not. If you did, the whole thing would break. Obviously, what happens in history is they do try and skip stages, and the whole thing falls apart. My belief is that, from a CRO perspective, at least, is that trying to skip stages isn't going to be effective. People have to have gone through each sort of phase of that maturity to understand it in order to know where the next stage is and how they're going to be able to operate that effectively. So trying to move people from doing nothing to, or a business even, from doing nothing to saying everyone in this company has an experimentation mindset, in my view, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen that quickly. You know, they can't just skip call it the dabbling stages that come in between. And
we're almost out of time, unfortunately. I'm really loving this talk, and definitely with regards to the LinkedIn post, definitely keep doing that. Keep stirring that debate. Hey, maybe for a future podcast, who do you think we should interview for that?
So I mentioned someone earlier that we hired who went from being a police officer to a CRO. His name is Sam Irvine. He's a consultant at conversion.com. For me, his story is a brilliant one, of, like I said, of taking risk, of testing something new. And as said, he has gone from a public servant to someone who has become a really impressive practitioner. And I think it's a perfect illustration
let's see if
what I want to see.
He is as positive of you as you are.
I only spoke to him last night just to see how things were getting on. So yeah, I hope so. But well worth talking to. A very different story, I guess, to most that people will have heard.
Nice. Yeah, and I'll if you can get us introduced, then I would love hearing his story. Matt,
Sure.
thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us, and I hope to talk to you soon, and I hope to see a lot of LinkedIn discussions.
Good. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye bye.